Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today discussing how to calm the anxious accountant in you. We are glad you're here and pleased to introduce Sandy Wickman as our presenter. Sandy is a Microsoft GP certified expert with over 25 years of experience implementing Microsoft Dynamics GP and Business Central products. She has a record of client successes in verticals including manufacturing, reverse manufacturing, banking, technology, gaming, professional services, retail sales, and nonprofits. She was one of the first implementation experts to earn the Dynamics Credentialed Professional certification. And her expertise also includes Dynamics BC with experience in several of the core competencies on this platform. She enjoys helping GP clients bridge the gap between what they are used to with Dynamics GP and the functionality they would use with Business Central. Sandy also excels in all aspects of successful implementations from business process reviews, configuration, customizations, reporting, and more. And this foundation, combined with over 40 years of experience in the business world, present a perfect position from which to consult with business owners and professionals on finding solutions and business process refinements. Sandy's experience with change management training also provides a unique complement to her business systems acumen. So please join me today in welcoming Sandy as our presenter. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. Very happy to have the opportunity to be with you today and hopefully provide some calm to us when we become anxious in our accountant brain. I do have an accounting background, and so recognize the impacts of considering the change of an ERP system. Dawn, I think you might have an opportunity to speak to this slide.
Correct. So unfortunately, we are not offering CPE credit today. So there will only be one email that will follow the webinar, and that will include the slides to Sandy's presentation, a recording of the webinar, and a link to a survey. And we ask that you allow 48 hours to receive that. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function or the chat. We'll stop periodically to address your questions. And Sandy might have some things that she would like audience response to. And we encourage you to let us know how you're feeling about certain things. So, Sandy, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Dawn. So some of our learning objectives for today are going to be, how do you do general journals and how do they compare between the experience in GP and BC? And how about bank journals? How do they compare? We're going to review batches, talk about transactions prior to posting, how you see those results, and printing trial balances. Okay, so we're going to start out with getting some context for some typical things that we learn in our ERP worlds, like batches and journals and those kinds of things, and how they compare between the two. That'll give us a baseline for how we go into the next parts of the demonstrations. We're going to start with batches. Batches in GP are manually created, and they're often by users with their initials, maybe in the batch name, and some specific naming convention that allows other users to know what the purpose of the batch is. So an example might be SW for my initials, AP check run 03/18/25, right? From that, we can know who the user is, we can know the intent of the batch, and maybe the date that it was created. Often in GP, batches are a one-time use. So when you post, the batch no longer exists to select or act on. Now we do have some recurring batches, but often they're a one-time use, and then that batch doesn't show up again unless you create it again. Batches can be routed through workflow for approvals, or you can use the legacy method of batch approvals within the interface, and they can be restricted to specific user permissions. Additionally, you can post all the batches from all the modules at one time if desired, or even module segments with just those series at one time. In BC, batches are created operationally or possibly by user if there's multiple users that are entering to the GL. Batches are only for journals in BC, not documents. And we're going to look at what the difference is between journals and documents here in a moment. You can do batch level approvals and workflows, or you can do line level approvals. A couple of differences there, right? So where can we have batches? Which kinds of transactions? And that leads us then to define journals versus batches. So in comparison, batches in BC are only for journals, not documents. Both BC and GP can route those batches for approvals. And there's a posting preview in BC versus an edit list in GP. Okay, one more clarification, and then we're going to go into the applications. BC has two concepts, journals and documents. Journals, you can think of a journal as a temporary worksheet to enter, review, adjust transactions before they're posted. You can see a partial list of the journal types on this slide. We've got general journals, sales journals, purchase journals, cash receipt journals, so forth, right? So those are all background processes that use the same posting process, or code unit as they're called in BC, to create the relevant ledger entries and hit the GL. So regardless of which journal you're coming from, it's using the same posting process to be able to transact those. Where journals differ from one another is on the actions and the options on the face of the journal itself, okay? Working with journals, you don't have to save it. BC is automatically saving as you're doing activities, so you don't have that big save button. And you can just leave it and come back to it later. Another difference between GP and BC, that save function. I mentioned that the place where the journals differ is the actions on the different journal types. So in this slide, you see a payment journal, right? The payment journal here has a prepare button where it can suggest vendor payments. Different types of journals, like general journals, would not have this option, but journals can still nonetheless behave very similarly. That kind of makes it easy because then understanding journals is a cross-functional idea or method of entering data in BC. I mentioned that it does not require using a specific journal when you're doing different functions. So in this slide, you can see I have the sales journal open, but I can actually pick a vendor, which makes it more of a purchase type journal, right? They're technically all the same. Nothing stops me from creating a payables payment transaction in a sales journal and getting the correct general ledger entries, right? Technically, you could use one journal to record a whole host of different types of transactions. Okay, then the other one, journals versus documents. So documents are defined within BC as things like sales invoices, purchase orders, purchase receipts. So documents are more like what you would think of in the old school world as a paper document, right? Those are documents versus our journals. What do documents and journals have in common? The exact same posting routines run for either one, right? They're identical in terms of how they create financial ledger entries and GL entries. Okay, so that's enough slides. Let's go look at applications. So I'm going to jump over here into my GP application, and I want to start by talking about batches, just as we did in the slide deck. On my financial area page, in my transactions section, I have the concept here of batches. And in my case, I've created a batch called demo. I'm going to select that batch, and I have a number of options for posting batches. I can post right here from the batch entry. I also have the ability to be able to come back to my transactions area and select series post. In this case, I would be seeing all of the batches for my financial series, and I could mark multiples of those and post multiple batches at one time. That's the series post. I also have the ability to go to my administration area and use master posting. In master posting, I would be able to see all the batches for all the different series, and I could select one series or even multiple series and post lots of batches from my master posting all at one time. So batches have multi-purpose use. Again, they can be routed for approvals. In this demo batch, I have created a couple of transactions. And in order to see those transactions, we're going to look in a few minutes at how we would review that through an edit list and go to those specific transactions and be able to see those. Okay, I'm going to jump over here into my BC. And I'm going to open my general journals. So anything in BC, any page that you go to ongoing, you can mark it as a favorite and it will be here on your header bar. So I'm going to open my general journals. And here at the top, I have the batch name. If I click on the ellipse button or 3 dots button, I can see that I have 3 different general journal batches. And every transaction that I do, I can save those into those batches by picking a batch at the start of my general journal entry. Again, these are systematically created, so they might have a different naming convention because I may be using them for different sorts of purposes. In this case, I may have some daily batches, monthly batches. However, you can still choose to use a naming convention that includes a person or a type of general journals. You might have your accruals or your prepaids, right? You can name them however you choose. You can route these batches for approvals, but you can also then route individual lines out of that batch to be approved by different approvers. So even more flexibility on those batches. Okay, then let's compare functionality in terms of working with Excel. So I want to jump back here for just a second and show you in the slide deck that we're going to be looking at how you can interact with Microsoft Excel when you're doing things like copy paste in GP or using Excel with BC. So I need to open an Excel thing I have here. So with GP, I have the opportunity to use a copy paste function from Excel into GP. I have to use this specific format in my Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this information, excluding the headers. I'm going to Control C here, and I'm going to jump back over to GP, into my financial area page, into my transactions pane, and select General. So I would typically fill out the header of this record so I can select a batch, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select my demo batch, the date, and I could put in a reference, whatever I might choose. Place the cursor in the account field and then click paste. And you can see all of the transactional information that I had with the debits and credits has pasted into the transaction in GP. Go ahead and save that one. Now, this kind of copy paste functionality extends to multiple types of transactions. I can use that in general journals as I just did, but I also have a copy paste function that's in the accounts payable transactions as well. I'm going to show you the payables one, and then we'll skip payroll for today, but I want to show you at least 2 kinds. So that was general journals. I'm going to go to the purchasing area page, into the transaction entry. Again, I'm going to fill in some information in my header. I could look up or give it a batch. Right? I have the option to create the batch on the fly in GP. Posting date is an important factor in batches in GP based on the dates. And then the frequencies. This is how we do recurring batches within GP. I'm going to select a vendor. And then I'm going to go ahead and click the paste button. So all of the details, I want to show you first again what I have in my details. So there's my vendor. I've even got trade discounts and freight and miscellaneous. And in this case, I'm actually even applying $500 cash to that transaction. So when I click the paste button, it's pasting all of that into my GP transaction with my purchases amount, my discounts, my freight and miscellaneous, as well as the cash payment that's being applied to this specific transaction for half of the transaction amount of 500 of the $1,000. Pretty handy, very useful. And if you aren't already using copy paste within GP, I highly recommend creating those formats and taking advantage of that. In my opinion, this copy paste in GP is super helpful. And I'd just like to get quick thumbs up from all the people that are on the webinar who may be currently using copy paste in GP. I'm going to go ahead and give us a thumbs up. And Dawn, if you want to get a count of approximately how many, that'd be helpful. This is one of the places where I think BC wins over GP. Within BC, we have the ability to edit in Excel and publish those edits back to BC. Understand. Please know that the Edit in Excel feature is available only by security, so you don't have to give it to everybody, but when you see it, you're going to love the ability to be able to do this, okay? It creates its own specific formatting, which is awesome. We don't have to have that specific template format that we did in GP. And I'm going to work for a moment with an item list. Again, comparing GP to BC, BC has this concept of list pages, which is what we're seeing here. You might notice that it looks very similar to what we see in Smart Lists in GP. So for any of you who are concerned about losing Smart List functionality, you can now be assured that BC has these list pages. Perfect opportunity to customize these lists, use them in much the same way that you do Smart Lists. You can save them, open them recurring, export them, and so forth. But for the moment, we're going to be looking at how we can use this as an edit in Excel functionality. I'm not going to be working with all of my items. I only want to look at the first 5 or 6 items, and I'm going to mark those. And then I'm going to click this button over here, which is an edit in Excel functionality, right? Notice as well that I can share this to Teams or even copy a link and send a link to someone. So the interoperability with other Microsoft tools is quite extensive within BC. So it opened an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. I'm going to double click and open that Excel sheet. Now, the first time that you open this in Excel, you'll notice that all the columns that are available to me to be able to either look at or edit are available in a format that it automatically created for me. I didn't need to paste things into a specific Excel format. It created the format for me. Now I'm going to enable the editing, and the first time you do this, there may be some login that's necessary here on the right-hand side. It is a function of validating the user before you are able to post things back into BC. You won't have people doing it that aren't authorized to do it. So now it's populated my list. I actually went ahead and got the entire list, but that's okay. I'm going to edit a couple of things here in Excel so that we can see this published back into our list. So I'll just add some text here at the end of a couple of my descriptions. So I've added the word test to a couple of item descriptions. You can't do something like change a master record number because that would be counter to our GAAP transactions. Once those items have been used in any way, any shape or form, you couldn't do that. But you'll also notice here the concept of the numbers within BC. Wherever you see NO period, that's the number sequence or numbering format for that type of activity or transactions. So unlike GP where it might have item number spelled out, it's NO period for numbers in BC. Okay, I've got a couple of items, changed the descriptions. Now I'm going to click on the Publish button over here, and it tells me at the bottom that it's updating and that the publish was successful. So I'll minimize my Excel. I'm back at my page here, and I'm going to use a couple of keystrokes to refresh with. It's a Control F5 that will refresh my web page. Okay, back here in my list page for my items, you'll see that my publish worked. I can see that I've changed the description of those 2 items to now include the word test. All right, let's see. Okay, we're going to shift to transactions now. So we got some concepts in place. We got some ways to be able to work with our data. The first one is that GP only deals typically with positive numbers. So within any sort of transaction, there are very few places where you can key in a negative number in GP. In GP, it works very much with the concept of debits and credits, not negative numbers. Some other things that are unique to or that are specific to GP types of transactions is that they are screen-based entries. The line detail copy paste, we looked at that. You can only use one currency in a journal. So as a transaction, you can only pick one currency for the entire transaction. Reversing entries are allowed. Recurring batches are available. You can copy existing entries in GP into a new entry, change the numbers if you like, and post it again. You can back out posted entries. You can choose to have no effect on the subledgers. So if you do transactions into the bank module, but you don't want them to post into the general ledger because you've got some sort of bulk entry going into GL already, GP allows you to do that. You can go from the subledger up to GL. You can go from the subledger and post only there and not to the GL. You cannot go from the general ledger back to the subledgers. You can in BC. So those are some important things to consider. How you use your subledgers, pluses and minuses on both sides. The post to a current year and last year only in GP. If you've closed your 2024 year, you have the ability to be able to post to 2025 and 24, but you can't post transactions back farther than the last closed year. We'll look at some of the differences then when we get to BC in just a moment, but let's go look at entering journals using those specifics that I just mentioned in the GP application. So we'll go back here to GP on the financial area page. And that batch that I had created a couple of minutes ago called demo currently includes 3 transactions. So I'm going to look up my demo batch. And within that, I can see that there should be 3 transactions. So I have an accrued expense account to my vehicle insurance, where my accrual has a credit and my vehicle insurance expense has a debit. I have a unique journal entry number and a specific date. Again, one currency because it's identified at the header level. I'm going to scroll forward. The next one in that demo batch is to record the current portion of a long-term note. So I've got my notes payable coming down and my current portion of that note payable being increased. Again, single currency, new journal entry number. And then the last one, this is the one that I pasted in. So within GP, I've got some transactions with some specifics that I mentioned in the header. I could continue to enter other journal entries into that same batch, or I can proceed to posting that batch. Now within BC, there are some things to consider there. You can have several different journal templates. A template gives you some framework into which you can key your journals. You can have recurring ones, fixed asset ones, cash receipts. You can hit the subledgers from any journal. So unlike GP, You could key something into a general journal and it will post into the subledger. You can assign deferrals to journal lines. The amounts, like debits and credits, you can key in negative numbers, and I'll show you how we're going to do that in a moment. The columns that you see are all personalized. You can do that individually. You can use a different currency within the journal. So an individual line could have a different currency. You can do reversing entries. You can do copy post, and you can post into any historical year, then rerun the closing process, and it updates the retained earnings. So you could go all the way back to 2020 and post a transaction. And if it needed to adjust retained earnings pushing forward, it will do that for you, right? Regarding the numbers within BC, you have an amount field and you can key in a negative or leave it off for a positive. Let's go look in BC now. I have a batch, which I can change the batch. Note the document number. So I have a document number just like I had a journal number in GP. I can have a date, and I can choose a currency code at the header level if I want to. So within the account number field, I may not always remember all of the account numbers. So I could just start typing insurance, and this kind of smart lookup was not native to GP. There were ISVs you could buy to do that, but in BC, it's a native functionality where if I start typing, it knows what to shorten the list so that I can add the account that I'm looking for. I can change the description, move across my page, and enter my debit amount. Pick my other GL account, which I can start typing again. Pick my other accrued. I can copy the description, paste it into the description for the next line, put in my $125, and I've completed a specific document. Instead of entering the next journal entry the same way we did this last one, I want to show you there's another look and feel that you can apply to how you enter journals in BC. I'm going to come up here to page and tell it that I want a new document number. Notice the document number is number 4 now. So by clicking new document number, I've now moved on to document number. I am going to tell it to show more lines, show more columns, sorry. It changes my look a little bit. So now I don't have the debit and credit fields over here. This transaction, I'm going to come down here to a new row. You'll notice that it gives me a new document number. I'm going to come over here and I want to pick this time for my long-term write-off that we were talking about. Long-term liabilities. I can adjust the description if I want to. I'll come over here to the amount and I'm going to put in an amount here. Only on the same row this time, I'm going to tell it which account I want to offset to. And it will then take that offset account and put the other side of the transaction. If I had keyed a negative here, it will offset a debit to that account. Because this is a positive, it's going to post the negative to that single account. Right? This is a very handy way to be able to enter lots and lots of journals because I can do a single line for every journal. When I go to the next line, it's going to give me a new journal entry for every line that I do going forward from there, right? You can also use that edit in Excel once you have a few of these journal entries, or you could bring all those journal entries back into GP using the Excel publish function that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. You can do journal entries, single row, double row, whichever you prefer. Okay. All right, let's see where we're going next. The next thing I wanted to highlight for you is that ability to be able to review these batches that we just did for accuracy prior to posting them. So let's start with GP. We're going to look at an edit list for our batch. So on my batches, I'll look up my demo batch. and I can print an edit list where I can see the header information. There's my journal entry number, my dates, as well as the accounts that are going to be impacted using an edit list. In BC, I have the ability to look at this post preview or preview posting. And it goes and looks at that specific entry that I was on and says, I have general entries. I have 4 entries that are going to be impacting. It shows me the entries. It shows me the GL accounts that are going to be impacted, right? And I can look at them in much the same way where I'm looking at the posting dates, the accounts, etc. So I have the ability to review before posting in either application. Okay, bank journals. So
Sandy, before you move on, we do have a question.
Okay.
And the question is, can you put a description for the full journal entry instead of having to put the description on each line?
No, you have to enter the description on each line if you're doing the 2-line entry. If you do the single line entry, which was the second example that I did, the description will print on both the debit and the credit source document field, description field. It's a good question and a distinction between using the 2. Okay, bank journals. So bank transactions are a completely separate transaction type in GP. They're accessed through the selection on the financial area page, but there is no option to save bank transactions in a batch, right? Bank transactions don't have save. They get posted to the general ledger. Depending on that setting to post to or post through the GL, bank transactions will automatically post and once either to or through the general ledger. But within BC, these can be completed using the same process, just demonstrated with one field selection different, right? So in BC, and because we're getting a little shorter on time because of our glitch there for a moment, I'm going to move past GP quickly and dive right into the BC one. In BC, I can do a bank transaction. Even here on my general journal screen, I can do a bank transaction. So when I pick the account type of bank account, then the fields that are to the right of that automatically adjust. When I choose that bank now, I'm looking for which bank account I want to impact instead of which GL account I want to impact. And then I can put in the amount. So if it was a check or a reduction to cash, and then I can put in my expense account. Oops. And I have now completed a bank transaction even within the general journals area. Makes it a little bit more flexible for you to be able to enter different kinds of things in the same journal. All right, let's see. Yep, we looked at the review for accuracy in the posting. Okay, so the last major topic on our list was to learn about trial balances. So within GP, you have the concept of a report option, which means you can set up the report option, save that set of criteria, and reuse it over and over again. So within BC, you get lots of filter choices, but they can't be saved. So let's see. I'll go ahead and mention that we're also going to cover the indication that GP can print those trial balances to printers or PDFs. In BC, you can print to Word, PDF, or Excel, right? Okay, so let's start with GP. In my financial area page, I'm going over here to the reports for trial balances, and I can create a detailed trial balance by selecting detail here. I can create an option. So these are saved options that include a number of selections, right? I can tell it which year, I can tell it which dates, I can include a variety of different restrictions, all of those things, and then define a destination to screen, printer, file. I can have a PDF set up as a printer, and the file is going to be a text type file. When I generate this detailed trial balance, I see all of the GL accounts here as headers, all of the transaction activity underneath it for any or all of the transactions for a single account, GL account. I can then identify any transaction that I need to take action on or look into deeper and take the next steps to do that. Additionally, in GP, I have the ability to be able to do a summary or rolled up version of that using a similar function where the report option is given a name. I can reuse that set of criteria over and over again to see a summary rolled up level where all of my accounts are here with the debit, credit, and ending balance. Now within BC, I'm going to use the looking glass to look up what I'm going to look for. So I'm going to click on the search button. It's an entire functionality search. And I'm going to type in trial balance. And it gives me a list of trial balances. Here I can either pick the detail one or the summary one. So I'm going to start with the detail trial balance. And you see I get a number of different choices. I can choose a printer. I can tell it what report layout to use. I can exclude GLs if I want to. I can include reversed entries. Here's that concept of number again, so I can have just a group of GL accounts where I would put a range of account numbers or a single one. Can also filter it to say I only want my income statement or balance sheet accounts, and so forth. So I can add a bunch of filters. I can add a date filter, right? And then I can click on the preview button. So similarly here, I have a little bigger. I have my GL account with the dates, the document numbers, the descriptions, debits, credits, and balance. So very similar in the net change. Very similar to the way I had a detailed trial balance on GP. Okay. I also have the option for doing a summary trial balance, and this one has some different choices in our options. So within this one, I also have the ability to be able to do percent changes and compare those balances. So I can compare the balances to actual from a prior year. I can even print to Excel. Look how cool that is. I can give it a range. I can give it a date filter, right? Multiple filters. And when I preview this one, it's going to open an Excel spreadsheet with my summary trial balance results in it. And I didn't have to export it from a smart list, do any of those other kinds of things. So I'll give it a date. Let's say, so again, up here in my output, downloads. And there's my trial balance right in Excel. Isn't that awesome? Okay, let's see.
We have a question with regard to trial balance reports, and it says, can you save specific trial balance report formats?
No, can't. So unlike the options, you can't save your selection criteria. You pick it each time that you generate it.
Very good.
We went ahead and looked at that send to. Oh, sorry, we didn't. That's a different choice. Back here in BC. The other thing I wanted to mention is this send to button down here at the bottom. If I click on send to, I have the ability to be able to send to multiple different output types and even to be able to schedule this report. So if you were used to having a saved option, you might choose to schedule this report to be generated on a periodic basis, and it will use that selection criteria to be able to produce the report on a regular basis for you. Okay. So that might give you another option. All right, so age trial balances, we're going to speed things up a little bit. Similar to what we have with regular trial balances from the general ledger, you also can do aged trial balances for both AP and AR. So within our GP application, we would typically navigate to the purchasing area or sales area page, go to the report trial balances, and you can look at aged trial balances or historical aged trial balances. So in this case, my report criteria has given me an ability to see my customers with all of their transactional activity aged across the aging buckets, and I can then use this report to take specific action to collect from different GP customers. So similarly, in BC, this time I'm going to click on the looking glass and select aged accounts. Right? And you'll see here that I have aged accounts for payables or receivables. So I'll pick receivables and I get those selection criteria again. I can age it by transaction date, due date, or even document date. If I only want to show it where it's overdue by a certain amount, I can do that. Again, I can print this to Excel. I can print it in detail or in summary. And if you have used the option to take your GP customer classes and convert them to customer posting groups, which we covered in my last webinar a month ago, you could pick a customer posting group to segment your accounts, your results to. Then I'll click preview. And again, here I have my aging for my customers where it shows the customer, dates and invoice numbers, balances, and the aging buckets. Okay, that's what I'd hope to cover for today. And we would love to hear from you about other topics or documents or types of things. If you've got questions about functionality, how they work together, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to present more of this kind of content in a manner that would support you in our LBMC community.
I want to thank you for what you presented here today. And I do want to thank the audience. GP Office Hours, as I mentioned before, is a value add that we offer our client base. And I wanted to let you know of the two upcoming GP Office Hours. In April, our strategic account manager, Lisa Cummings, is going to be presenting on Don't Let the Sun Go Down on GP, with apologies to Sir Elton John. And that's going to be, if you're looking at how do I go about deciding what my next step is going to be and how do I navigate this roadmap with the Microsoft deadline of 2029, we encourage you to attend in April. Also in May, it's a favorite topic. It will be presented by our President and CEO, Brian Wilton, and it's archiving data in your Dynamics GP systems. So that's coming up May 20th. You don't want to miss that. And thank you for all of the wonderful feedback that you've given us today. We sure appreciate you being here. And again, Sandy, thank you. And thanks to our audience.